The crack of a gunshot split the morning air, but Willow Zimmerman never flinched. In the frontier town of Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1876, she had learned to live with the constant sounds of chaos. What she couldn't abide, however, was injustice, and from the window of her modest millinery shop, she was witnessing exactly that. A crowd had gathered in the dusty main street, drawn by the commotion outside Halcom's saloon. Willow recognized the man immediately, Edgar Thornton, the new mine owner who'd been throwing his weight around town since arriving 3 months prior. His face was flushed with whiskey and rage as he dragged a young woman by her hair into the street, her body scraping against the rough dirt. "You think you can steal from me?" Thornton bellowed, yanking the woman's head back with such force that Willow could hear her cry of pain from across the street. "I'll teach you what happens to thieves in my establishment." The woman Willow recognized her as Sarah. One of the saloon girls was sobbing, her hands clutching at her scalp. "Please, sir, I didn't take nothin'. I swear on my mother's grave." Thornton raised his hand to strike her, and Willow felt her body move before her mind could catch up. She was halfway across the street when a tall figure stepped from the shadows of the livery stable. "That's enough," came a deep voice, steady as bedrock. "Let her go." The crowd parted as a man Willow had never seen before walked forward with the easy confidence of someone who knew how to handle trouble. Dust clung to his dark riding clothes, and his hat was pulled low over his eyes. But there was no mistaking the authority in his stance or the way his hand rested casually near the holster at his hip. Thornton sneered. "Mind your own business, stranger. This thieving whore." "I said," the man repeated, stepping closer, "let her go." Something in his tone made Thornton hesitate. His fingers loosened in Sarah's hair, and she scrambled away, seeking refuge behind Willow, who had frozen in place at the edge of the gathering. "Who do you think you are?" Thornton demanded, his hand moving toward the gun tucked into his waistband. With a movement almost too fast to follow, the stranger's revolver appeared in his hand. "Someone who doesn't take kindly to men who hurt women. Now, I suggest you head back inside and cool your temper before you do something you'll regret." For a tense moment, Willow thought Thornton might draw anyway, but something in the stranger's eyes, something cold and certain, made the mine owner reconsider. With a string of curses, he turned and stomped back into the saloon. The crowd began to disperse. The morning's entertainment concluded. Only then did the stranger holster his weapon and turn toward Willow and the trembling Sarah. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, his voice gentler now. Sarah nodded shakily. "Yes, sir. Thank you kindly." The man tipped his hat, and for the first time, Willow got a clear look at his face. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with sharp features weathered by sun and wind. His eyes were a startling blue against his tanned skin. "Madam," he acknowledged Willow with a nod. "Jack Weston just rode in." And that's how Willow Zimmerman's orderly life was turned upside down on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning in Redemption Creek. "Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Weston," Willow said formally, trying to ignore the inexplicable flutter in her chest. "I'm Willow Zimmerman. I own the millinery shop." She gestured to the modest storefront across the street with its hand-painted sign. "Miss Zimmerman." He touched the brim of his hat again, his eyes lingering on her face for a moment longer than necessary. "Pleasure." Sarah was still shaking. "I need to go. If Mr. Thornton catches me standing around." "You can come to my shop," Willow offered immediately. "Stay there until he calms down." The saloon girl hesitated. I don't want to cause you trouble, Miss Willow. Nonsense. Come along. Willow turned to Jack Weston. Would you care to accompany us, Mr. Weston? I've just brewed some coffee. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. I never turn down good coffee, Miss Zimmerman. The three of them crossed the street to Willow's shop. Inside, surrounded by hats in various stages of completion, Willow helped Sarah clean up her tear-streaked face while Jack Weston stood by the window, watching the street with the alertness of a man accustomed to danger. Has Thornton done this before? He asked without turning. Sarah nodded, wincing as Willow gently dabbed at a scrape on her cheek. He gets mean when he drinks, which is most days. Says I've been skimming from the till, but I swear I haven't. I believe you, Willow said firmly. Thornton's been nothing but trouble since he bought the mine. Half the men in town work for him now, and he knows it gives him power. Jack turned from the window. What brought him to Redemption Creek? Silver, Willow replied. The Blackwater mine was floundering until he bought it last winter. Now it's producing again, but at what cost? The miners work in terrible conditions, longer hours than before. And he runs the saloon too. Bought it from old Max Halcombe 3 months ago, Sarah explained. Said he needed some place for his men to spend their wages. Make sure most of it ends up back in his pocket one way or another. Jack's expression darkened. I've seen his type before. Willow studied him as she poured coffee into 3 chipped cups. What brings you to our little town, Mr. Weston? Just passing through? He accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. Looking for work. Mostly. I've been riding with cattle drives the past few years, but I'm getting tired of sleeping on the ground. You're a cowboy, then? Among other things. His answer was deliberately vague, and Willow noticed how he didn't elaborate. There was something in his manner, a wariness, a distance that suggested a man with secrets. Well, Willow said briskly, Redemption Creek can always use another pair of strong hands. The Wilson Ranch might be hiring, or the stage office needs guards for the silver shipments. Jack sipped his coffee, watching her over the rim of the cup. You know a lot about the town's business. I make hats, Mr. Weston. She smiled slightly. People talk while I measure their heads. I hear things. Call me Jack, he said suddenly. Mr. Weston was my father, and I wasn't overly fond of him. Before Willow could respond, the shop door burst open. A tall woman with iron-gray hair pulled into a severe bun stormed in, her face a picture of outrage. Willow Zimmerman, have you completely lost your mind? The entire town is talking about how you nearly got into a brawl in the street, and now you're harboring one of Halcombe's girls. Good morning to you too, Mrs. Fairchild, Willow said calmly. I assure you, I was merely being a good Christian. Martha Fairchild, the banker's wife and self-appointed moral guardian of Redemption Creek, sniffed disapprovingly. A good Christian keeps proper company. Her gaze fell on Jack, and her eyebrows shot up. And who might you be, sir? Just passing through, madam. Jack's voice was respectful, but Willow detected a hint of amusement in his eyes. Well, Mrs. Fairchild drew herself up. Willow, I came to remind you that the Ladies' Aid Society meets tomorrow at my home. We'll be planning the spring social, and as a business owner, your presence is expected. Of course, Mrs. Fairchild, I wouldn't miss it. The older woman nodded stiffly. See that you don't, and she glanced meaningfully at Sarah. Do consider your reputation, my dear. Your parents would have expected better. After she left, Sarah let out a long breath. That woman could freeze hell over with a look. Jack chuckled, a warm, rich sound that did peculiar things to Willow's insides. You handled her well, Miss Zimmerman. Willow, she corrected. If I'm to call you Jack, it's only fair. She began tidying the workbench, needing something to do with her hands. Mrs. Fairchild means well. She's just rigid in her thinking. And what about you? Jack asked. Are you rigid in your thinking too? Willow paused, a half-finished hat in her hands. I believe in judging people by their actions, not by what others say about them, she glanced at Sarah, or by what they do to survive. Something shifted in Jack's expression, respect perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. That's a rare quality. Not so rare, Willow demurred, just often inconvenient. Sarah stood up, smoothing her rumpled dress. I should go. The other girls will be worried. She squeezed Willow's hand. Thank you, both of you. Come back if you need anything, Willow told her, and be careful. After Sarah left, a strange silence fell over the shop. Jack Weston remained standing by the window, finishing his coffee, while Willow pretended to organize spools of ribbon. She was acutely aware of his presence, the way he took up space, the quiet confidence in his posture. You're not what I expected to find in a town like this, he said finally. A milliner? A woman who stands up to men like Thornton without blinking. He set down his empty cup. That takes courage. Or foolishness, Willow replied. My father used to say I had more spirit than sense. Your father's not around anymore? No, she kept her voice neutral. He and my mother died of fever 5 years ago. I came west with them when I was 16. When they passed, I had to make my own way. Jack nodded, understanding without pity. It's not easy being alone. No, she agreed. But I manage. She hesitated, then asked, Where will you stay? If you're planning to remain in town for a while, Mrs. Peterson runs a clean boarding house on Elm Street. I'll look into it. He straightened, moving toward the door. Thank you for the coffee, Willow. You're welcome, Jack. She met his gaze directly. And thank you again for what you did today. He tipped his hat and stepped out into the sunlight, leaving Willow to wonder what kind of man Jack Weston really was, and why his brief presence in her shop had left her feeling more alive than she had in years. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Word of Jack Weston's confrontation with Edgar Thornton spread through Redemption Creek like wildfire. By Wednesday evening, Willow had heard at least 3 different versions of the story, each more dramatic than the last. In the latest telling, Jack had supposedly disarmed Thornton and forced him to apologize to Sarah on his knees. Willow smiled to herself as she closed her shop for the day. People always did love a good story, especially one featuring a mysterious stranger standing up to the town bully. She was locking the front door when she heard footsteps approach. Turning, she found Jack Weston standing a respectful distance away, his hat in his hands. Evening, Miss Zimmerman. Willow, she reminded him. You're becoming quite the local legend, Jack. He grimaced. So I've heard. Hadn't planned on making such a spectacle of myself my first day in town. I don't think you had much choice in the matter. She tucked her keys into her pocket. Have you found lodgings? Yes, at Mrs. Peterson's, like you suggested. And a job, too. The stage office hired me to ride shotgun on the silver shipments. First run is on Friday. That's wonderful. Willow hesitated, then asked, Would you care to walk with me? I was heading to the cafe for supper. Something like pleasure flickered across his face. I'd be honored. They walked side by side down the boardwalk, drawing curious glances from townspeople finishing their day's business. Willow was used to being noticed. A young, unmarried woman running her own business was always subject to scrutiny, but the attention felt different with Jack beside her. "You've caused quite a stir," she observed. "Mrs. Fairchild cornered me after the Ladies' Aid meeting to inquire about your situation and character." Jack's mouth twitched. "And what did you tell her?" "That you appeared to be a gentleman who objected to seeing women mistreated." She seemed dissatisfied with such a limited assessment. He laughed outright at that, the sound warming Willow from the inside. "I'm afraid I'd disappoint her even more if she knew the whole truth." "Which is?" His expression sobered. "Nothing so mysterious, just a man who's made mistakes and is trying to do better." They reached Marshall's Cafe, a modest establishment that served simple but hearty meals. Inside, several tables were already occupied, and Willow noticed the conversations lull briefly as she and Jack entered. "Don't mind them," she murmured. "New faces are rare enough to be interesting." They found a table in the corner, and Betsy Marshall herself came to take their order, her curiosity poorly disguised behind professional courtesy. "Evening, Miss Willow. Nice to see you." She glanced at Jack. "And you must be Mr. Weston. Heard you're working for the stage office now." "Yes, madam," Jack replied politely. "Special tonight is beef stew with biscuits," she informed them. "Fresh apple pie for dessert." "Sounds perfect," Willow said. After Betsy left, she shook her head with a smile. "By tomorrow, half the town will be speculating about our understanding." "Would that bother you?" Jack asked, his eyes intent on her face. The directness of his question caught her off guard. I've learned to ignore gossip. It's an occupational hazard of being a woman alone in a small town." "That doesn't answer my question." Willow met his gaze, feeling a flush rise to her cheeks. "No, it wouldn't bother me. But you might not appreciate being linked to me once you hear all the stories." "What stories?" His voice remained casual, but she sensed his focused interest. She sighed. "When I first opened my shop 3 years ago, Mayor Hargrove's son took a persistent interest in me. When I refused his advances, he spread rumors that I'd been overly friendly with several men in town. It was nonsense, of course, but mudsticks." Jack's expression darkened. "And what happened to this charming fellow?" "William Hargrove enlisted when the troubles with the Sioux started up north. He hasn't returned, which suits me perfectly well." She shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. "Most people know the rumors were spite, but some like Mrs. Fairchild still view me with suspicion. A young, unmarried businesswoman is always subject to scrutiny." "Their loss," Jack said quietly. "I've only known you for 3 days, and I can see you're a woman of character." The simple compliment, delivered without flattery or expectation, touched Willow deeply. "Thank you, Jack. That means more than you might realize." Their food arrived, steaming and fragrant, providing a welcome distraction from the unexpected intimacy of their conversation. As they ate, Jack asked about the town, and Willow found herself telling him about Redemption Creek's history, how it had started as a mining camp before silver was discovered in the nearby hills, then grew into a proper town serving as a supply point for ranches in the surrounding valley. "And what about you?" she asked eventually. "You said you've been working cattle drives?" "For the past few years, yes." He sopped up the last of his stew with a biscuit. "Before that, I rode with the Texas Rangers for a spell. And before that, well, I did what I had to do to survive." "Is that what brought you to Wyoming? Survival?" He considered her question. "Partly. I heard the territory was growing, that there were opportunities for men willing to work hard, but mostly I was looking for somewhere quieter, less complicated. And have you found it? In Redemption Creek? Jack's gaze held hers. I'm beginning to think I might. After dinner, Jack insisted on walking Willow to her home, a small but neat house at the edge of town. They strolled in companionable silence, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. "Will I see you again?" Willow asked as they reached her gate, surprising herself with her boldness. Jack smiled, the expression transforming his face. "I'd like that. Perhaps I could call on you Sunday, after church." "I'd enjoy that very much." He hesitated, then took her hand gently in his. "Good night, Willow Zimmerman." "Good night, Jack Weston." As she watched him walk away, Willow felt a sense of anticipation she hadn't experienced in years. There was something about Jack Weston that intrigued her, a depth beneath his quiet demeanor, a hint of a past that had shaped him in ways she could only guess at. And for the first time in a long while, she found herself looking forward to Sunday with more than her usual sense of duty. Friday morning dawned clear and crisp, with the promise of spring in the air despite the lingering chill. Willow opened her shop earlier than usual, hoping to finish a special order hat before the afternoon stage arrived. Mrs. Fairchild had commissioned an elaborate creation for the spring social, and while Willow found the woman trying, her patronage was valuable. She was adding the final touches, a spray of silk flowers and a modest veil, when the shop bell jingled. Looking up, she was surprised to see Sarah from the saloon, dressed in a plain day dress rather than her usual working attire. "Good morning, Miss Willow," she said, hovering near the door. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Willow set aside her work. "How are you, Sarah? Has there been any more trouble with Mr. Thornton?" "He's been leaving me alone, mostly." Sarah twisted her hands together. "Word is, he doesn't want to cross that new fellow, your friend Mr. Weston." Willow felt a warmth in her cheeks. "He's not exactly my friend. We barely know each other." Sarah's knowing smile suggested she'd heard differently. "Well, friend or not, he's made quite an impression. Mr. Thornton's been sulking something fierce, drinking more than usual." "That doesn't sound promising." "No, madam, it doesn't." Sarah hesitated, then blurted out, "Actually, that's why I came. To warn you. I heard Mr. Thornton talking with some of his men late last night. He was saying ugly things about Mr. Weston and about you." Willow's hands stilled. "What kind of things?" "He said Mr. Weston needed to be taught a lesson about interfering in other people's business, and he said—" Sarah looked uncomfortable. "He said you were no better than us girls at the saloon, keeping company with a man you just met." "I see." Willow's voice was steady, but she felt a flutter of unease. "Thank you for telling me, Sarah." "There's more," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "Your Mr. Weston is riding shotgun on today's silver shipment, isn't he? I heard Thornton tell his foreman to spread the word to someone called Deacon. Said there might be opportunities in knowing the schedule." Willow's blood ran cold. "You think he's planning to have the stage robbed?" "I don't know for certain, but Mr. Thornton has been unhappy about the stage company refusing to use his men as guards. Says they're cutting into his profits." "When does the stage leave?" "Noon, I think." Willow glanced at the clock. It was just past 10. "I need to find Jack, or Sheriff Miller." "Be careful," Sarah warned. "Mr. Thornton has eyes everywhere. That's why I came early when most of his men are still sleeping it off." After Sarah left, Willow paced her shop, considering her options. Sheriff Miller was an honest man, but he was also cautious to a fault. Without proof, he might not act on what amounted to saloon gossip, and if she warned Jack directly, he might confront Thornton exactly what the mine owner seemed to want. Finally, she made up her mind. Locking the shop, she headed toward the stage office on the other side of town. She would find out exactly when and where Jack would be riding, then decide her next move. The stage office was busy when she arrived, with passengers checking in for the noon departure and cargo being loaded. Through the open doorway of the freight room, Willow spotted Jack examining a shotgun, his back to her. Before she could approach him, a hand gripped her elbow. Miss Zimmerman, what a pleasant surprise. She turned to find Edgar Thornton himself standing beside her, his thin lips stretched in what passed for a smile. Up close, he was less imposing than he appeared from a distance, a man of average height with expensive clothes that couldn't quite disguise his paunch or the broken veins on his nose that spoke of hard drinking. "Mr. Thornton," she acknowledged coolly, trying to extract her arm from his grip. "I'm afraid I'm in a hurry." "Looking for your cowboy friend, no doubt." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've taken quite an interest in a man you hardly know. People are talking." "People always talk, Mr. Thornton. Now, if you'll excuse me." His fingers tightened painfully on her arm. "A word of advice, Miss Zimmerman. Redemption Creek is my town now. Your friend would be wise to remember that, and so would you. Let go of me." Willow's voice was low but firm. For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then, from behind her, came Jack's voice. "Is there a problem here?" Thornton released her arm immediately, his face smoothing into false joviality. "Not at all. Miss Zimmerman and I were just having a friendly chat. Isn't that right, my dear?" Willow stepped away from him, moving closer to Jack. "Mr. Thornton was just leaving." "Indeed I was." Thornton tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Good day to you both. And safe travels, Mr. Weston. I hear the roads can be unpredictable this time of year." After he sauntered away, Jack turned to Willow, concern evident in his eyes. "Are you all right? What did he want?" "I'm fine. And I think he wanted to threaten you through me." Quickly she explained what Sarah had told her that morning. "I'm worried, Jack. If Thornton has arranged for the stage to be robbed," Jack's expression turned grim. "It wouldn't be the first time a local big shot arranged to have his own shipments hit, especially if they're insured. But I need more to go on than saloon talk." "What will you do?" "My job," he said simply. "But I'll be extra vigilant, and I'll speak to the driver about taking a different route than usual, just in case." Willow hesitated. "I should go to the sheriff." "With what? A second-hand conversation overheard by a saloon girl? Sheriff Miller seems like a decent sort, but he'll need more than that, especially against a man as powerful as Thornton." Jack touched her arm gently. "I appreciate your concern, Willow, truly, but I can handle myself." "I don't doubt that," she said, "but I'd rather not test it if we don't have to." His eyes softened. "I'll be back by sundown. Still planning to attend church on Sunday?" "Of course. Then I'll see you then." He squeezed her hand briefly, then turned back to his preparations. Willow left the stage office, her mind troubled. For all his confidence, Jack was just one man. If Thornton had indeed arranged an ambush, he could be riding into serious danger. But without proof, there was little she could do. As she walked back to her shop, she noticed one of Thornton's men, a burly fellow with a distinctive red beard, watching her from across the street. When their eyes met, he didn't look away, but tipped his hat with mocking deference. The message was clear. She was being watched. And suddenly, Willow felt afraid not for herself, but for Jack Weston, who had stepped between a bully and his victim on his first day in town, and who might now pay the price for that simple act of decency. The afternoon passed with excruciating slowness. Willow tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept returning to Jack and the stage carrying its valuable cargo through the wilderness. The route to the territorial capital passed through several areas perfect for an ambush: narrow canyons, dense woods, stretches of road where a fallen tree could easily block passage. By 4 o'clock, she had given up any pretense of productivity. She was standing at the window, watching the street anxiously, when she spotted Sheriff Miller hurrying toward the stage office, his usually unhurried gait now urgent. Something had happened. Without stopping to think, Willow grabbed her shawl and hurried outside, following the sheriff at a distance. A small crowd had already gathered outside the stage office when she arrived, their voices a low murmur of concern. "Messenger just arrived," someone was saying. "Stage was hit about 10 miles out at Eagle Canyon." "Anyone hurt?" asked another voice. "Don't know yet. Messenger said there was shooting, but he was sent ahead before it was over." Willow pushed forward, her heart pounding. Excuse me, please." Sheriff Miller was speaking to the stage company manager, his expression grave. Willow strained to hear their conversation. "Send a posse right away," the sheriff was saying. "How many men were on board?" "Driver, guard, and 3 passengers," replied the manager, "plus Weston riding shotgun." "And you're certain about the location?" "Eagle Canyon, where the road narrows by the old mining trail. Perfect spot for an ambush." Willow felt her knees weaken. Eagle Canyon was notorious for being difficult to navigate and almost impossible to escape if trapped there. "Sheriff," she called, pushing forward. "Sheriff Miller!" He turned, surprised. "Miss Zimmerman, this isn't really the time." "It's about the stage robbery," she said urgently. "I have information. I tried to warn Mr. Weston this morning. I believe Edgar Thornton may be behind the attack." The sheriff's bushy eyebrows rose. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Zimmerman." Quickly she repeated what Sarah had told her. "I know it's not much to go on, but given the timing." Miller rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Thornton, eh? Can't say I'm entirely surprised. The man's been pushing boundaries since he arrived." He looked at her sharply. "But we'll need more than hearsay to take action against him." "I understand. But please, when you form your posse, be careful who you include. If Thornton has men in town watching, I've been sheriff in this town for 15 years, Miss Zimmerman. I know who I can trust." His expression softened slightly. "You're concerned about Weston, I take it." Willow nodded, not bothering to hide her worry. "He helped someone who needed it. He shouldn't die for that." "No, he shouldn't." Miller straightened his hat. "I'm gathering men now. We'll ride within the half hour." "I want to come with you." "Absolutely not," the sheriff said firmly. "This is no place for a woman, Miss Zimmerman. We have no idea what we're riding into." "But the best thing you can do is go home and wait for news." His tone brooked no argument. "I promise we'll do everything possible to bring Weston and the others back safely." Recognizing defeat, Willow nodded. "Thank you, Sheriff." As she walked away, her mind was racing. She couldn't simply sit at home waiting for news, not when Jack might be injured or worse. But what could she do? She was no gunfighter, and she had no horse of her own to ride out to Eagle Canyon. Then an idea struck her. Dr. Abernathy. The elderly physician who lived at the edge of town would certainly be called if there were injuries. And his housekeeper, Mrs. Gunderson, was a regular customer at Willow's shop. With renewed purpose, Willow hurried toward the doctor's house. If she couldn't join the posse, she could at least make herself useful, preparing for the wounded, and be among the first to hear news when it came. Dr. Abernathy's house was a 2-story clapboard building with a small sign identifying it as both his residence and practice. When Willow knocked, Mrs. Gunderson answered promptly. "Miss Zimmerman." The plump older woman looked surprised. "The doctor isn't seeing patients this afternoon." "I'm not here as a patient," Willow explained quickly. "I've heard about the stage robbery. I thought the doctor might need assistance preparing for possible injuries." Understanding dawned in Mrs. Gunderson's eyes. "You're sweet on that new fellow, the one who stood up to Thornton." It wasn't a question. "Come in then. The doctor's packing his bag now. Sheriff sent word to be ready." Inside, Dr. Abernathy, a spry man in his 70s with a shock of white hair, was indeed preparing a large medical bag. He looked up when Willow entered. "Miss Zimmerman, Helga said there was trouble with the stage." "Yes, doctor. An ambush at Eagle Canyon. Sheriff Miller is forming a posse now." The doctor nodded grimly. "Bad business that. Narrow passage, difficult terrain. If men are hurt, moving them will be a challenge." He glanced at her. "You've come to help?" "If I can," Willow said. "I have some experience with nursing. My mother taught me before she passed." "Good, good. Helga, prepare the back room for possible patients. Miss Zimmerman, you can help me gather supplies." For the next hour, Willow assisted the doctor in preparing bandages, boiling instruments, and organizing medicines. The work kept her hands busy, though her mind continued to conjure terrifying images of Jack wounded or dead in that remote canyon. "You're worried about someone specific," Dr. Abernathy observed as they worked. Though elderly, nothing escaped his sharp eyes. "Mr. Weston was riding shotgun," Willow admitted. "He's a friend." "Ah," the doctor nodded. "The young man who intervened with Thornton seems to have made quite an impression in a short time." "Yes," Willow said softly. "He has." The doctor patted her hand. "Sheriff Miller is a capable man, Miss Zimmerman, and from what I've heard, your Mr. Weston can handle himself in a tight spot." "I hope you're right." It was nearly dusk when they heard horses approaching at speed. Willow rushed to the window, her heart in her throat. A rider was galloping toward the doctor's house, one of the young men who worked at the livery stable. "Doctor!" he called, reining in his lathered horse. "Sheriff says to come quick. They're bringing in wounded men from the stage." Dr. Abernathy was already grabbing his bag. "How many injured?" "3 for certain. One's bad bullet took him in the chest." "And the others?" Willow couldn't stop herself from asking. The young man shook his head. "Don't know all the details, miss. But they caught the robbers, 4 of them. Sheriff's got 'em locked up already." "I'm coming with you," Willow told the doctor, who merely nodded, recognizing the determination in her voice. They followed the messenger to the sheriff's office, where a crowd had gathered once again. As they approached, Willow could see several men being helped from horses, one clutching a bloody bandage to his shoulder, another limping heavily. Her eyes scanned desperately for Jack, but in the growing darkness and milling crowd, she couldn't spot him. Fear gripped her heart as the doctor pushed forward, pulling her along in his wake. "Make way! Let the doctor through!" Sheriff Miller's voice rang out, and the crowd parted. Inside the sheriff's office, 3 injured men lay on hastily arranged pallets. Willow's gaze darted from face to face, relief washing over her when she didn't see Jack among them. The wounded were the stage driver with a bullet in his shoulder, a passenger with what appeared to be a broken leg, and one of the robbers himself, gravely wounded in the chest. "Where's Weston?" she asked one of the posse members, trying to keep her voice steady. "Outside," the man replied, jerking his thumb toward the door. "Caught a bullet across his ribs, but he refused to come in until the others were tended to." Willow hurried back outside, searching the dimly lit street. And then she saw him, leaning against a hitching post, his shirt dark with blood on one side. "Jack." He looked up at her voice, his face drawn with pain but his eyes lighting when he saw her. "Willow, what are you doing here?" "Helping Dr. Abernathy." She reached him, her hands hovering uncertainly over his wounded side. "You're hurt." "It's just a graze," he said, though the tightness around his eyes told a different story. "Others need the doctor more." "Don't be foolish," she chided gently. "Come, let me help you." He allowed her to support him as they walked back toward the doctor's house, away from the crowd and commotion. "The robbers?" she asked. "Caught all 4, he confirmed. 2 wounded, 2 surrendered when they saw their odds." His mouth twisted in a grim smile. "One of them started talking right away, said they were hired by someone in town. Promised good money to hit the stage and make sure the guard didn't survive." "Thornton," Willow said with certainty. "Probably. But the man claims he never met his employer directly, just got messages and money through an intermediary." Jack winced as they walked. Still, it's enough to raise questions. They reached the doctor's house, where Mrs. Gunderson clucked with concern at the sight of Jack's bloodied shirt. While the doctor was still at the sheriff's office with the more seriously wounded, Mrs. Gunderson directed them to a small examination room. "Let me see," Willow said, helping Jack remove his shirt. The wound was a deep furrow across his ribs, still seeping blood but not life-threatening. With Mrs. Gunderson's assistance, Willow cleaned and bandaged it, trying to ignore both the intimacy of the situation and the numerous old scars that marked Jack's torso, evidence of a life that had seen its share of violence. "You've done this before," Jack observed as she worked. "My mother was skilled with herbs and healing," Willow explained. "She often helped neighbors when the doctor was unavailable. She taught me what she could." "She taught you well." When she finished, Mrs. Gunderson brought them both hot tea with a liberal addition of whiskey for medicinal purposes. They sat in the doctor's small kitchen, the events of the day catching up with them as the adrenaline faded. "You could have been killed," Willow said quietly. Jack's eyes met hers over the rim of his cup. "Occupational hazard." "Don't joke about it," her voice caught. "When I heard the stage had been ambushed, you were worried about me. It wasn't a question. Of course I was worried. She stopped, suddenly aware of how strongly she was reacting to a man she'd known less than a week. "I don't have so many friends in town that I can afford to lose one," she finished more calmly. Jack set down his cup and reached across the table to take her hand. "Thank you for caring, Willow. It's been a long time since anyone did." The simple honesty in his words touched something deep inside her. Before she could respond, the door opened and Dr. Abernathy entered, looking tired but satisfied. "All stable," he reported. "Even the robber with the chest wound, though he's not out of danger yet." He eyed Jack. "And you, young man? Miss Zimmerman pat you up properly?" "Yes, sir," Jack confirmed. "She did an excellent job." "Good, good. You should rest now, though. That wound may be shallow, but you've lost blood, and the body needs time to recover." I should get back to Mrs. Peterson's, Jack said, rising somewhat unsteadily. Nonsense, the doctor declared. It's late, and you're in no condition to be walking across town. You can use the spare room upstairs tonight. I often keep patients overnight for observation. Jack looked like he might protest, but exhaustion won out. If you're sure it's no imposition. Not at all. Mrs. Gunderson will show you up. The doctor turned to Willow. And you, Miss Zimmerman? It's dark out. Would you like me to arrange an escort home? Before she could answer, Sheriff Miller appeared at the door. No need for that, Doc. I'm headed that way myself. I can see Miss Zimmerman home safely. As they walked through the quiet streets, the sheriff filled Willow in on the events at Eagle Canyon. The ambush had been well planned, a fallen tree blocking the road, 4 armed men lying in wait. But Jack had been suspicious from the start, keeping his shotgun ready. When the shooting began, he'd reacted instantly, taking down one of the robbers and providing cover for the driver. Your friend's got quick reflexes and a cool head, Miller said with grudging admiration. If he hadn't been there, we might be dealing with a massacre instead of just injuries. Have the robbers implicated Thornton directly? Willow asked. The sheriff sighed. Not yet. But they're singing like birds about being hired by someone in town. It's just a matter of time before we get the truth. He glanced at her. In the meantime, you should be careful, Miss Zimmerman. If Thornton suspects you had anything to do with foiling his plans, I can take care of myself, Sheriff. I don't doubt it, but even so, keep your doors locked and your eyes open. They reached her house and Miller tipped his hat. Good night, Miss Zimmerman. Good night, Sheriff. And thank you. Inside her small home, Willow moved through the familiar routine of banking the fire and preparing for bed, her mind still processing the day's events. Jack could have died today. The thought made her chest ache in a way that both frightened and exhilarated her. It was foolish, she knew, to feel so strongly about someone she'd just met. And yet, there was something about Jack Weston that called to her, some recognition of a kindred spirit, someone who understood what it meant to stand alone, to make difficult choices, to build a life from whatever materials fate provided. As she drifted toward sleep, Willow found herself praying for the first time in years, not the formal prayers of Sunday service, but a simple, heartfelt plea for protection. For Jack, for herself, for the fragile connection growing between them that somehow felt more significant than its brief existence should allow. Sunday dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself was celebrating the Sabbath. Willow dressed with particular care for church, choosing a blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and a simple but elegant hat of her own design. If her preparations took longer than usual, she refused to acknowledge the reason or the flutter of anticipation she felt at the thought of seeing Jack again. The small white church at the center of Redemption Creek was already filling when she arrived. Willow nodded and smiled at familiar faces as she made her way to her usual pew, noting the whispers and glances that followed her. News of her involvement with the wounded from the stage robbery had clearly spread, adding fresh fuel to the town's already active gossip mill. She was arranging her skirts when a hush fell over the congregation, followed by a renewed buzz of whispers. Looking up, she saw Jack Weston standing in the doorway, clean-shaven and dressed in what appeared to be new clothes, dark trousers, a white shirt, and a vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. Despite the bandage she knew lay beneath his shirt, he stood straight and tall, his hat in his hands. Their eyes met across the church, and Willow felt her cheeks warm at the open admiration in his gaze. After a moment's hesitation, Jack walked down the aisle and stopped beside her pew. "Miss Zimmerman," he said formally, "may I join you?" "Of course, Mr. Weston." She moved over slightly, making room beside her. As he sat down, she could sense every pair of eyes in the church upon them. Mrs. Fairchild, several rows ahead, had turned completely around to stare, her expression a mixture of shock and disapproval. "We're causing a scandal," Willow murmured, though she couldn't bring herself to care. "Good," Jack replied quietly. "Gives them something to think about besides their own affairs." The service began before she could respond, but throughout the hymns and Reverend Thompson's sermon on the Good Samaritan, which seemed particularly pointed today, Willow was acutely aware of Jack beside her, his deep voice joining in the hymns, the warmth of his arm occasionally brushing hers, the clean scent of soap and aftershave. After the service, they emerged into the sunlight to find themselves the center of attention. Several people approached to congratulate Jack on his bravery during the stage robbery, while others gave Willow knowing looks that ranged from supportive to scandalized. Edgar Thornton was conspicuously absent, she noted. According to town gossip, he had been avoiding public appearances since the robbery, claiming illness. "Miss Zimmerman," Mrs. Fairchild's voice cut through the pleasant conversations. "A moment, if you please." Willow suppressed a sigh. "Of course, Mrs. Fairchild." The banker's wife drew her slightly aside, though not far enough to prevent Jack from overhearing. "My dear, I speak as someone who has your best interests at heart. To appear publicly with a man you barely know, especially one of uncertain background, well, it invites speculation of the most unfortunate kind." "Mr. Weston saved several lives on Friday," Willow pointed out. "Surely that speaks to his character." Mrs. Fairchild sniffed. "Being handy with a gun hardly qualifies a man as suitable company for a respectable young woman. What do you really know about him? Where he comes from? His people? His past?" Before Willow could respond, Jack joined them, touching his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Fairchild, isn't it? I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Jack Weston, madam." The older woman drew herself up. "Mr. Weston, I was just expressing concern to Miss Zimmerman about appearances." "So I gathered." His smile was polite but cool. "You should know that my intentions toward Miss Zimmerman are entirely honorable. I've asked permission to call on her, which she has graciously granted." "I see." Mrs. Fairchild's lips thinned. "Well, I'm sure you understand that our little community takes a great interest in the welfare of its members, particularly those who are unprotected." "Willow strikes me as perfectly capable of protecting herself," Jack said mildly. "But should she ever need assistance, I'd consider it a privilege to offer it." The implied rebuke was clear, and Mrs. Fairchild's face flushed. "Indeed. Well, good day to you both." As she marched away, Willow bit back a laugh. That was rather deftly handled. "I've dealt with her type before," Jack said, offering his arm. "Shall we walk? I believe I promised to call on you today." They strolled through town toward Willow's house, drawing more curious glances but feeling freer away from the church gathering. Jack moved more easily than he had on Friday night, though Willow noticed he still favored his injured side. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better," he assured her. "Dr. Abernathy says I'm healing well. I should be able to return to work by the end of the week." "I'm glad, though I confess I'm not eager for you to risk your life on the stage route again." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "Worried about me, Willow Zimmerman?" "Someone ought to be," she replied. You don't seem concerned enough about your own welfare." When they reached her house, Willow invited him in for coffee. It was a significant step, a single woman entertaining a man in her home, unchaperoned, but she found she cared less about conventions with each passing day. Her home was simple but comfortable, with furniture she'd brought from her parents' house and curtains she'd sewn herself. A bookshelf held her modest collection of novels and poetry, while a small desk in the corner served for correspondence and accounts. "It's lovely," Jack said, looking around with genuine interest. "It suits you." "Thank you," she replied, pleased by his approval. "It's not grand, but it's mine. That means something, I think, to have a place that's truly yours." "It means everything," he agreed quietly. While Willow prepared coffee, Jack examined the photographs on her mantel, her parents on their wedding day, a family portrait taken when Willow was about 16, just before they came west. "You favor your mother," he observed. "Yes, though I have my father's stubbornness, according to him." She smiled at the memory. "They were good people, simple, hard-working. They came west because my father had dreams of a better life, maybe starting a small ranch. But then the fever took them both within a week of each other." "I'm sorry," Jack said, and she could tell he meant it. "Losing family, it leaves a hole that never quite fills." "You speak from experience?" He nodded, accepting the coffee she offered. "My mother died when I was 14. My father, well, he was already gone in every way that mattered, even though he lived another 10 years. Drink took him in the end." "And you've been on your own since then?" "More or less." He sat at her small kitchen table, cradling the coffee cup in his hands. "Did odd jobs, worked ranches, drifted, fought for the Union when the war came. After that, I tried my hand at various things. Some I'm prouder of than others." The way he said it suggested there were parts of his past he wasn't eager to discuss. Willow didn't press. Everyone had things they'd rather leave behind. "And now?" she asked instead. "What does Jack Weston want now?" He considered the question seriously. "Peace, I think, a place to belong, work that matters." His eyes met hers. "Connections that mean something." The simple honesty of his answer touched her deeply. "I want those things too." They talked for hours, the afternoon slipping away as they shared stories and opinions, discovering shared tastes in books and music, debating politics and philosophy. Willow found herself laughing more than she had in years, drawn out of her habitual reserve by Jack's genuine interest and unexpected humor. When the light began to fade, Jack reluctantly rose to leave. "Thank you for today," he said, standing at her door. "It's been special." "Yes," she agreed softly. "It has." He hesitated, then lifted her hand to his lips. "May I call on you again? Perhaps Tuesday evening?" "I'd like that very much." After he left, Willow stood at her window, watching him walk away. A strange feeling had taken root in her heart, part happiness, part fear. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself to care deeply about anyone, to risk the vulnerability that came with it. And Jack Weston, for all his quiet strength and evident decency, remained something of a mystery, a man with shadows in his past, and perhaps in his future as well. Yet, as she prepared for bed that night, Willow found herself smiling at nothing in particular, looking forward to Tuesday with an eagerness that both thrilled and terrified her. Whatever complications might lie ahead, she couldn't deny the simple truth. Jack Weston had walked into her life less than a week ago, and already she couldn't imagine it without him. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of ordinary days, transformed by Jack's presence in her life. True to his word, he called on her Tuesday evening, bringing a small bunch of wildflowers he'd picked on the outskirts of town. They sat on her porch as the sun set, talking easily about everything and nothing. He returned to work that Thursday, riding shotgun on the stage route that now detoured around Eagle Canyon. Each time he left, Willow felt a knot of anxiety that didn't ease until he returned safely. But return he did, usually stopping by her shop to let her know he was back before cleaning up at his boarding house. On Sundays, they attended church together, ignoring the continued gossip their association generated. In the evenings, they often walked along the creek for which the town was named, or shared simple meals at Marshall's Cafe. It was during one such evening, as they lingered over apple pie, that Jack first mentioned his plans for the future. "I've been looking at land," he said, watching her reaction carefully. "About 5 miles out of town, where Crescent Creek joins the river, there's a small cabin already built, and enough acreage for a decent start." A start? Willow's heart quickened. For what? A horse ranch eventually. The land has good water, decent grazing. It needs work, but he shrugged. "I've saved most of what I earned on the cattle drives, plus my wages from the stage company. It would be tight, but I think I could make it work." "You're planning to stay in Redemption Creek, then?" She tried to keep her voice neutral, though inside she was anything but. "That depends," he said quietly. "On what?" His eyes held hers. "On whether I have reason to stay." The implication hung between them, clear but unspoken. Willow felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Jack, you don't need to say anything now," he assured her. "I know we haven't known each other long. I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking about the future, a permanent one here." Before she could respond, the cafe door burst open, and Sheriff Miller strode in, looking troubled. He spotted them immediately and came to their table. "Evening, Miss Zimmerman. Weston. Sorry to interrupt your meal, but I thought you should know. Edgar Thornton was found dead an hour ago." Willow gasped. "Dead? How?" "Shot in his office at the mine. His clerk found him when he went to deliver some papers." The sheriff's gaze shifted to Jack. "Given recent events, I thought you might want to be aware. There's already talk." Jack nodded grimly. "That I might have had something to do with it." "You've been here all evening," Willow protested. "Anyone can see that." "Yes, and that's fortunate," Miller agreed. "But there are those who might think you had reason to want Thornton dead, especially after the stage robbery. While we couldn't prove he was behind it, the rumors were enough to damage his standing in town." "Who do you think did it?" Jack asked. Miller sighed heavily. "Hard to say. Thornton had no shortage of enemies. Could have been business-related. He wasn't known for fair dealing. Could have been personal. He wasn't above taking liberties with women, as we've seen. Or it could have been one of his own men looking to settle a score." "What happens now?" Willow asked. "Investigation. Though honestly, unless someone confesses or we find solid evidence, it may go unsolved." The sheriff looked troubled by this prospect. "In the meantime, be careful, both of you. Towns get uneasy when prominent men die violently, and people look for someone to blame." After Miller left, a somber mood settled over their table. The discussion of future plans was set aside as they finished their meal quickly and headed outside. The night air had turned cool, and Jack offered Willow his jacket as they walked toward her house. "What are you thinking?" he asked after they'd gone a few blocks in silence. "That Thornton was a cruel man who hurt people, yet I can't be glad he's dead," she admitted. "And I'm worried about what this means for the town. For the mine workers who depended on those jobs. Jack nodded. The mine will likely be sold to another owner. Whether that's better or worse for the workers remains to be seen. And what about you? She looked up at him. The sheriffs right there will be those who suspect you, despite your alibi. Let them suspect, he said firmly. I know the truth, and so do you. That's what matters to me. They reached her house, but neither seemed eager to say good night. Finally, Jack took her hand gently in his. Willow, about what I was saying earlier, about having a reason to stay. I know, she said softly. And I think you do have a reason, Jack, if you want it. His expression brightened, hope clear in his eyes. I want it more than anything. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when she responded, it deepened into something that made her heart race and her knees weaken. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Jack's smile was like sunrise after a long night. I'll see you tomorrow? Tomorrow, she agreed, feeling as though something fundamental had shifted between them, a step across a threshold into a future suddenly rich with possibility. The death of Edgar Thornton sent ripples through Redemption Creek. The investigation proceeded as Sheriff Miller had predicted, methodically, but with limited results. The shooter had left few clues, and while several people had motives, none could be definitively connected to the crime. Meanwhile, life continued. The mine remained operational under the temporary management of Thornton's foreman, while lawyers in the territorial capital sorted out the estate. The saloon was purchased by a consortium of local businessmen, with Sarah and the other girls allowed to stay on under more favorable conditions. For Willow and Jack, the weeks following Thornton's death were both wonderful and strange. Their relationship deepened quickly, as though they'd known each other far longer than the short weeks since Jack's arrival in town. They spent every available moment together, learning each other's habits and histories, dreams and fears. Jack purchased the land he'd spoken of, 15 acres with a small cabin, a creek running through the eastern edge, and rolling hills that would make excellent pasture for the horses he planned to breed and train. Each day after finishing his route with the stage, he rode out to the property to work on improvements to the cabin and fencing. Willow often joined him on weekends, bringing picnic lunches and helping with the endless tasks of creating a home from the bare bones of the abandoned property. She found unexpected joy in these simple activities, planting a small garden beside the cabin, hanging curtains in the freshly glazed windows, discussing which trees might need to be cleared and where a proper barn should eventually stand. It was during one such afternoon, as they sat on the cabin's newly repaired porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson, that Jack finally asked the question that had been hovering between them for weeks. "Willow," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. "I know it hasn't been long, by most standards, but I think we both know that what's between us is special. Rare." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I love you. I think I've loved you since that first day. When you were ready to face down Thornton yourself to help Sarah," Willow's heart swelled. "I love you too, Jack, more than I thought possible." His smile was radiant in the fading light. "Then I have a question for you." Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. From it, he produced a simple gold ring with a small, perfect diamond. "Willow Zimmerman, will you marry me? Will you build this life with me, here on this land?" Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. "Yes, Jack. Yes, I will." The ring slid onto her finger, as though it had always belonged there. Jack cupped her face in his hands and kissed her deeply, a promise of all the days and nights to come. When they finally broke apart, Willow laughed softly. "Mrs. Fairchild will have apoplexy, an engagement after only 6 weeks. "Let her," Jack said, grinning. "We know what we've found in each other. That's all that matters." They were married on a perfect October day, with the aspens turning gold along the creek banks and the air crisp with the promise of winter. The ceremony was held in the little white church in town, with most of Redemption Creek in attendance, some out of genuine good wishes, others simply to witness the culmination of what had been the most talked about courtship in recent memory. Willow wore a dress of ivory silk that she'd designed herself, with a crown of autumn flowers in her hair instead of a traditional veil. Jack stood tall and handsome at the altar in a new black suit, his face solemn until she appeared at the church door. Then his smile broke through like sunshine. Dr. Abernathy gave the bride away, a role he accepted with tears in his old eyes when Willow asked him. Sarah, now the respectable assistant manager of the renamed Redemption Saloon, served as maid of honor, while Sheriff Miller stood as Jack's best man of friendship that had developed unexpectedly in the wake of Thornton's death and the investigation that followed. Even Mrs. Fairchild attended, grudgingly admitting that the couple seemed well suited despite the unseemly haste of their union. Her disapproval had softened somewhat when Jack had proven himself not just a hard-working man of good character, but also a shrewd investor who had purchased his land at an excellent price. After the ceremony, the entire town celebrated at a reception held in the town square, with tables laden with food contributed by every household, music provided by local fiddle players, and enough good wishes to last a lifetime. As dusk fell, the newlyweds slipped away, riding together toward their cabin toward home. They had decided that Willow would maintain her millinery shop in town, traveling back and forth as needed while Jack developed the ranch. It wasn't a conventional arrangement, but then, nothing about their relationship had been conventional from the start. That first night as husband and wife, as they lay tangled together in the quiet darkness of their cabin, Willow whispered, "Do you ever think about how it all began, with you standing up for Sarah that day?" Jack's fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I think about it often, how one moment can change everything. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't said, 'That's enough.' But I was, and I did." He kissed her gently. "Some things are meant to be, Willow. I believe that now. All the wandering, all the mistakes, all the hard years they were leading me here, to this town, to you." She nestled closer against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. To us, he agreed, and all the days to come." 5 years passed, and the small cabin became a proper home. The horse ranch, which they named Redemption Ridge, prospered under Jack's careful management. His reputation for fair dealing and quality horses spread throughout the territory, bringing buyers from as far away as Denver and Salt Lake City. Willow's millinery business flourished as well. She had hired 2 assistants and expanded her offerings to include dressmaking, capitalizing on the growing prosperity of the region as the railroad finally reached Redemption Creek, bringing new settlers and opportunities. But their greatest joy was their family. 3-year-old Thomas, named for Willow's father, had his mother's dark curls and his father's startling blue eyes. Baby Emma, just learning to walk, was the image of Jack in feminine form, with a determined chin and adventurous spirit that kept her parents constantly on alert. The truth about Edgar Thornton's death had eventually emerged, though not in the way anyone expected. 2 years after the shooting, a letter arrived for Sheriff Miller from a man dying of consumption in a Denver hospital. The writer confessed to killing Thornton in revenge for the death of his sister, a saloon girl who had worked briefly in Redemption Creek before taking her own life after Thornton's abuse. The revelation had finally put to rest the lingering suspicions some had harbored about Jack's involvement, though by then his place in the community was secure. He had been elected to the town council the previous year and was respected as a thoughtful voice for responsible growth as Redemption Creek expanded with the coming of the railroad. On a warm summer evening, as the children played in the yard under the watchful eye of Mrs. Gunderson, who had become a beloved fixture in their household after Dr. Abernathy's peaceful passing, the previous winter, Jack and Willow sat on their porch, much as they had the day he proposed. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked suddenly, "tying your life to a man you'd known for such a short time?" Willow looked at him in surprise. "Never, not for a single moment." She reached for his hand. "Why? Do you have regrets?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner," he said, bringing her fingers to his lips. "Think of all the time we could have had." "We have now," she reminded him, "and the future. That's what matters." From the yard came the sound of Thomas's laughter as he chased a butterfly with Emma toddling determinedly after her brother, small face set in concentration. "Yes," Jack agreed, his eyes on the children. "The future. Our future." As the sun slipped toward the horizon, painting the land in the same gold and crimson as that day 5 years before, Willow leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that their story begun in a moment of courage and compassion on a dusty street had only just begun. And in Redemption Creek, folks still told the tale of the day a stranger rode into town, saw a woman being dragged into the street by her hair, and said 5 simple words that changed everything. "That's enough. Let her go." Words that had led, against all odds and expectations, to a love as vast and enduring as the western sky above them.